This is a special report on Trump's coup plot and how it looks worse when you view all the evidence together with the plotters aware their plan was illegal. And by the time this all ended, they were seeking pardons, which are for criminals, and pleading the fifth.
Dr. Eastman emailed Rudy Giuliani and requested that he be included on a list of potential recipients of a presidential pardon.
I assert my Fifth Amendment right against being compelled to be a witness against myself. Fifth.
Did Rudy Giuliani ever suggest that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
He did. Mr. Meadows did seek that pardon.
Key point, many of those people wanted pardons totally separate from the January 6th violence. And that is important as we look at a different plot, Trump's effort to get a coup planner who would go farther than Giuliani, his lawyer, Sidney Powell. She would go even farther. So the plan was to take her off the campaign team and try to install her inside the government to get the military to seize voting machines, an illegal order that several lawyers warned could land them and even Trump in prison. So here Trump turned to the more standard approach to a coup that we see in so many parts of world history, try to abuse the military. Now, military leaders have said, and veterans have said, that generals would refuse this kind of order to get soldiers to seize voting machines, just like they'd refuse an order to, say, bomb the opposing party's headquarters, a point that was also made in a White House meeting described as a nutty, screaming mess.
What they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
Sidney Powell was fighting. Mike Flynn was fighting.
Flynn screamed at me that I was a quitter.
Trump did back down on that very bad, red, illegal plan. And by the way, quitting an illegal coup would be a good thing, but this was the military plot. Another conspiracy's prong that hits a dead end. And this is key because facing that dead end late that same night of December 18th, Trump turned to the other plot pushed by Eastman and Navarro, posting what is a now infamous tweet that announces the January 6th rally, beginning, quote, Peter Navarro releases 36-page report alleging election fraud, more than sufficient to swing victory to Trump. That was the lie Trump needed to build on, and then he summons the people to D.C. for the first time. Quote, big protest in D.C. on January 6th will be wild. Now, that's the first time Trump ever told supporters there was a place to come join this fight. And none of this happened in isolation. The evidence of Trump's criminal intent is worse when all the facts are shown about the plot. So let's take a look. Trump began the public operation to sabotage January 6th as a certified vote, which was criminal, only after hitting this dead end in the failed plot to have the military help a coup. Now, his lawyers warned him of the criminal issues here, the criminal intent and actions of that military plot, and he still moved continuously from that conspiracy to this one. Now, that's damning evidence if prosecutors are indicting a broader conspiracy. And the White House aide connecting both plots is Navarro, whose aide helped sneak in the military plotters there. Then he's part of Trump's January 6th announcement. It begins with a Navarro plan, and it's notable Navarro's fought so hard to hide his own evidence and testimony while trying to spin his own role. Even he began denying any involvement in the plot about the military seizing voting machines, which he actually used to push in public. And was it a bad idea or wrong to pursue the military to seize American voting machines?
That I would like to get more to the bottom of. That's not something that I would have put forward by any stretch of the imagination. I think we need a special counsel that we put in place before Inauguration Day to get to the bottom of this. I think we need to seize a lot of those voting machines.
Special counsel Powell seized voting machines through the military. He was pushing that in public. Now, as Trump moved from that voting machines idea, which did hit another brick wall, to this emphasis on January 6th, you get to that other plot to get the Pence plan going. And this intensified, lawyers arguing that Mike Pence could abuse his ceremonial role not just to open the votes on the 6th, but, quote, to count them. They argued Pence would be the ultimate arbiter, a point that Trump advocated in public and that the evidence suggests would be discussed when he then held a meeting with Republican lawmakers on December 21st for hours about what they would do. Those plots are the context for Trump seeking DOJ interference with what I will say was an absurd kind of last-ditch conspiracy where a more junior DOJ official, Mr. Clark, who's had his home searched, was then demanding that, well, they just get the whole DOJ to tell Georgia legislators come back into session and toss their own voters' decision backing Biden. Now, very few people think that would have worked, but the reason it failed was because the DOJ resisted.
Pat Cipollone said, yeah, this is a murder-suicide pact.
I'm going to resign immediately. The president immediately turned to Mr. Engel, and he said, Steve, you wouldn't resign, would you? And he said, absolutely, I would, Mr. President. You could have hundreds and hundreds of resignations of the leadership of your entire Justice Department. Jeff Clark would be left leading a graveyard.
So DOJ interference, a bust. Another plot running out of steam, which matters for how you approach the whole conspiracy. Trump thought DOJ would somehow help strong-arm the states, but even without them, he pressed on with this brazen authoritarian plan where he actually talked to hundreds of state legislators on January 2nd, desperately proclaiming they would be the real power and they could cancel their own citizens' votes. If that's familiar, it relates to something else under investigation, but that might make more sense together than separate, because he demanded Georgia's top elections official join him in a kind of voter fraud. This, remember all the arrows? This is on the same day as the call to the state legislators.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
So that was trying to get states to overturn. So you have these 7 plots we've mentioned in the report, and then you have the U.S. Congress. States rejected Trump's demands. We do know that. Even very red states. Trump was left then pushing what was operationally an incomplete conspiracy, but a conspiracy nonetheless. Because as the states found, the Congress would be faced with the same sort of menu. There wasn't really public evidence or even a decent political pretext for just rejecting their own citizens' votes. But the plan here was hoping that Congress or Pence would do what others wouldn't, where other plots failed. And they would just come in and falsely lie or claim Biden lost. This is the coup, or the so-called sweep, that some plotters assert was completely distinct from any violence on January 6th.
The plan was simply this. We had over 100 congressmen and senators on Capitol Hill ready to implement the sweep.
Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, always stepping forward. We're briefing them. We're going to have a session today.
You've got Ted Cruz. You've got Lindsey Graham. You've got Tom Cotton from Harvard Law School. You've got some heavies over in the Senate.
I'm sorry we're missing Mark Meadows. I told him, can you go back and ask a couple of Doug Collins?
The remedy was for Vice President Pence, as the quarterback in the Green Bay sweep, to remand those votes back to the 6 battleground states.
The vice president's got a lot of power, and that's very important to recognize.
Are we to assume that this is going to be a climactic battle that's going to take place this week about the very question of the constitutionality of the Electoral Count Act of 1877?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on the courage and the spine of the individuals involved.
Vice President Mike Pence? I don't want to.
Do you realize you are describing a coup?
No.
And that's where these 3 plots actually go hand in hand. Trump intended any of them to hopefully work in his mind, but ideally they would work together. Get the states or Congress or Pence to lie and declare that they're overthrowing the vote. Now, under the rules, there actually is a way this could have gone much farther, or even to a standoff with 2 dueling president-elects. This is not a movie. This is not fan fiction. It's vital to understand for preventing it from happening in the future.